Welcome back to Agama's campus in Thailand. In this episode, I'm going to talk about my experience taking this course, Essence of Tantra. You can take this workshop on its own as a standalone workshop, or you can take it as part of Agama's Tantra Foundation Retreat, which is what I just did with my partner Luna. The Agama Tantra Foundation Retreat combines 3 of Agama's Tantra courses. Long story short, there's the Essence of Tantra, then there's the Men's Vira training or the Women's Complete Femininity training, and then there's also Evolving Through Tantra. So we just finished those 3 weeks, and now I get to be here with you, giving you my review of the Essence of Tantra. It's important to me to say that I actually have no affiliation with Agama whatsoever. I don't work for them, I'm not paid by them. I actually paid full price for this course, so there are no conflicts of interest here. This is my raw, honest opinion. And with that, I invite you to take everything I say with a grain of salt because it's just my opinion. I'm one guy from my own lens, and everyone is going to have their own experience, and everyone's going to have a different lens from me. I am a white, heterosexual male, and with that comes a lot of privilege. There are a number of things that happen in the workshop that could be triggering for people, and less so for me because of my privilege as a white, heterosexual male. So let's get to it. First of all, I want to say a quick couple of pros and cons. In this workshop, they had 88 people come, 88 people from around the world who are interested in learning Tantra. And that is a really amazing group of people. So that's a huge pro right up front. If you come here, you're going to meet really amazing people from all over the world. Another quick pro is that the exercises, the actual practices we do in the course are awesome. Another quick pro is that it's a sex-positive classroom environment. And just being in something like that after growing up in a conservative society, America, North Carolina for me, that was pretty awesome to be in a place where you could talk about anything sexual and it was okay. A couple more quick positives about the course. I feel so much more empowered and inspired in my practice of brahmacharya. And if you'll come here, you'll hear that term a lot. Brahmacharya is basically the practice of building and containing and moving your sexual energy up. It's the idea of not letting your sexual energy leave your body through explosive orgasms. And for me, that would be in the form of ejaculating. So the practice of brahmacharya for me is non-ejaculation. And right now, at the time of making this video, it has been 3 weeks since I last had an ejaculation. And I've had a decent amount of sex during that time, and not once have I experienced blue balls, and I have not experienced orgasm hangover, which is what happens for guys when they ejaculate, which is like you immediately lose interest in sex. Your attraction for your partner usually drops, and then for a day or two when that happens to me, I feel less inspired, I have less zest for life, I have less overall just pizzazz, and yeah, I don't like that. So that's a huge plus. Another positive for me was that before every session at Agama, they had us do a consecration in class. And a consecration is basically an opportunity for you to set your intentions, to pray, to connect with something that's greater than yourself, to connect with spirit, source, whatever that is for you. There's an opportunity to do that in the beginning of each class. And in line with that, another huge perk of Agama is that you don't just come here to learn sexual techniques. I mean, you could do that, but there's so much more that you could get out of your time here. This is a place where you can combine your sexuality and your spirituality. And that is really fucking awesome and rare. And I've really enjoyed that about my time here. A couple of challenges I had with the program, and I'll go into all these in more detail in a little bit. There was basically a complete lack of space holding. There was a lot of lecture, and I'm talking about a lot of lecture. We sat, and then we sat, and we listened, and then we sat some more, which really worked for some people, and for me that was a challenge. The program itself is extraordinarily heteronormative. If you don't know what that means, I'll go into it again in a little bit. And finally, there was almost zero talk of consent and boundaries compared to what I think there should be in a workshop like that. Consent is a topic that I think any program dealing with sexuality and relationship at all should talk about and should spend a decent amount of time with. At Agama, it was barely talked about. It was talked about briefly at the beginning of a few different exercises that involved touching the physical bodies of another human. And to me, that's just not enough. That's not enough for the type of things that we were doing. I think that Agama should start off their Essence of Tantra week with at least a half-hour talk on the topic of consent and power dynamics within consent. I think it would have been great if we had done practice exercises around consent, practicing saying no, practicing saying yes, being asked questions that are edgy, asking people questions that are edgy and getting a no or a yes as part of an exercise. That can really help people prepare for when in the moment itself they're faced with a situation where their boundaries are about to be crossed or are being crossed, and it will give them tools and techniques and confidence to be able to say no and speak up when something like that is happening to them. Okay, moving on. The second challenging thing about the Essence of Tantra workshop was that I didn't feel like there was a really powerful space held by the instructors. And what do I mean by that? I know the term space holding, some people hate it and some people love it. And for me, it means creating an environment that is safe for people to move through really intense emotions or to move through deep places in their life, and a place where they feel safe talking and sharing things that are vulnerable. And so to give you a couple of concrete examples of why I didn't feel like it was safe, a number of times when students asked the instructors questions, I noticed the instructors actually interrupted the students in the middle of their question, and a couple times the student had an emotionally charged question and was obviously feeling emotions when they were asking the question. And then so to be interrupted in that process, and then to have the instructor just give advice immediately instead of giving any empathy at all, or letting the student finish their question, I think that's a really bad example of space holding. And I saw students contract when that happened, and I felt contracted in my body when I saw them be interrupted. And I don't like that in a workshop setting. Another example of that is we did exercises that involved sharing between students in small groups. There were no instructions given to us as to how to share or how to listen. And I think this is an important part of space holding too, is teaching the people in your workshop how to listen and how to hold space for each other. So for example, in one of the small groups I was a part of, we did an exercise. Then after that exercise, we were supposed to reflect on the exercise within our small group. And when one person shared in my group, 3 people immediately went into advice giving, but not just like, oh, well, did you think about trying this? Somebody was like, oh, that's because you don't believe in love. And if you believed in love, then you wouldn't be calling that into your life. And I was like, holy shit. I'm not saying this is directly the responsibility of the course instructor, but what I am saying is that a little bit of instruction around this would have gone a long way. And another just tidbit of my own opinion about this is that I think in the group sharing context, it would have been really helpful to have a timer so each person would have an allotted amount of time to share. That way the students would not have had to work out on their own how much they should share, or if they should cut somebody off at a certain point because they're just talking and talking and talking. That's just, I would prefer that it would have been held that way. And the last major challenge that I have with this workshop, and I have with Agama in general actually, is the heteronormativity of it. And what does that mean? It means that basically Agama is geared towards the heterosexual man and the heterosexual woman. Their whole language usage, all of their programs, the whole way they present Tantra itself is basically man, woman. And there's not really room or mention of any sort of homosexual relationships at all. And the only time those were mentioned in the workshop is when people asked questions about it, specifically because we had gone a number of days and hadn't heard anything about it. And specifically because the instructors had been using language like, women need men in order to be able to do Tantra. And men, go find yourself a woman for these exercises, because we have to make sure that all the men have women. And Agama would even go so far as to get other women from their school to come in to make a complete gender balance so the men would not have to do exercises with other men. And this might not be a challenge for you, but for me it was a challenge. A, I don't believe Tantra can only be done by heterosexual people. And B, I think it can actually be really powerful for men to connect deeply with each other. And what's happening here is there's a reinforcement of the paradigms where men don't connect deeply with each other, and instead the way that you connect, the way that you experience deep connection in the divine is through a woman. And I'm all for sharing deep connection and the divine through women, and I think it's a sad thing that there is not more focus on the potential for connection between men, non-sexual connection, just presence, deep presence connection with each other is powerful. One other thing was that there was zero mention of anybody of the trans experience. And when somebody asked an instructor about the energetics of somebody who's trans and how that relates to Tantra, the instructor's response literally was, I don't know. End of story, cut off, done. If you're considering coming here, you should know that that's going to be the case and expect that. And if you are able to roll with their language, if you're able to roll with how they do things here, then there's still a lot you can get out of the course. I think it can be a useful ability to go into scenarios that you might not totally agree with and be able to take everything with a grain of salt and learn what you want to learn and leave the rest. All that being said, I still am interested in taking more courses at Agama, and there's one next month that I want to take. It's the Science of Tantra. Now, I'd like to share with you a couple alternatives of what you might want to do if you're not able to come to Thailand and take this course, or if you don't want to take 6 days to do this. If you don't want to take 6 days to do this, but you want to study other things at Agama, I would recommend taking Agama's Taste of Tantra course. It's basically the 6-day Essence of Tantra course broken down and condensed into 2 days. I actually took that course last summer, and it's what made me want to come back to Agama. So if I were to do the Foundations of Tantra retreat again, I would not take the Essence of Tantra, I would take the Taste of Tantra and spend those other 4 days on the beach and reading a book, maybe eating coconuts in the sun. But that being said, I know there were people who really enjoyed the 6 days of content. So maybe you would be one of those people. And I know I mentioned it earlier, but I want to say again that I came and I did these workshops with my partner Luna, who some of you probably know as Pussy Witch. And we were able to do all the exercises together that we wanted to. We weren't pressured to work with other people at all. And I'd say that's important to know if you're planning on coming here, or you're thinking about coming here and you're in a relationship that's closed or monogamous. You don't actually have to do anything with anybody else that you don't want to. There are a lot of Tantra and sacred sexuality courses out there in the world. I would say just please do your research. Look up reviews like this one. Look up a history of different teachers to see if there are any challenges or scandals that they've had. Look up their past students to see if you can learn from their experiences to really feel out what feels right for you. Now to the question of, would I recommend this course? I had overall a positive experience, and I know people who hated it and who left early, and I know people whose lives it has changed forever. Even though my experience was overall positive with this course, I felt like it was lacking in a lot of areas. And I actually had a much more positive experience in the men's Vira training and the Evolving Through Tantra course. I would say come here with the knowledge that no program is perfect, especially not this program. Ultimately, you and anyone else is going to have their own experience, and I'm just one guy with my own perspective. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below this video. I would love to hear from you. And in my next couple of videos, I'm going to do a review on the men's Vira training and the Essence or Evolving Through Tantra course. And I'm also going to post a video of riding a bike through Koh Phangan because that's one of my favorite things to do. Cheers.